My cousin accused me of assaulting her because I didn't take her to a party, and now that the truth is out, everyone thinks I should forgive her because she's just a kid, but I believe everyone should face the consequences of their actions. I'm not a great writer or communicator, so bear with me. Honestly, I'm still so angry about all this that it's hard to put my thoughts into words. If this comes across as messy or scattered, I apologize. I'm just trying to vent, not win a writing contest. A few weeks ago, my life was turned upside down because of a lie. I've replayed that night 100 of times since then, because if it hadn't happened, my life would be very different now. But there's nothing I could have done, so here I am, caught in this mess because of my cousin. It still infuriates me to think about it. It all started when my uncle and aunt asked my sister, Emma, and me to watch over my cousin Lena, who's 16 years old. Now, watch over might sound strange for a teenager, but they didn't trust leaving her home alone while they went to an out-of-town event. I wasn't thrilled about it, but Emma agreed. So what could I do? Say no and look like a jerk? Lana arrived in full tantrum mode. She was furious because her parents wouldn't let her go to a party her friends were hosting. She barely spoke to me when she arrived. Just dropped her stuff and glued herself to her phone. I was already annoyed, but I figured as long as she didn't cause any trouble, it would be a quiet night. Well, you probably already know that's not how the night went, right? All night long, Lana acted like the world revolved around her. She kept whining to Emma about how strict her parents were and how they didn't trust her even though she was practically an adult. Emma tried to calm her down by offering to order pizza or put on a movie, but nothing seemed to improve Lana's attitude. I kept my distance. I didn't want to get dragged into teenage drama. I stayed in my room working on a college project, while Emma tried and failed to keep Lana entertained. But Lena wasn't just sulking. She was plotting something. I didn't know it then, but all her complaints about missing the party weren't just venting. She had a plan. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. At first, I thought it was Emma needing something, but no, it was Lana. She was standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, looking annoyed as if I had ruined her night. "What's up?" I asked, still half asleep. She didn't waste any time. She got straight to the point and said she wanted me to drive her to her friend's house. Apparently her friends were still partying, and she didn't want to miss out. It was the middle of the night. Who in their right mind asks for a ride to a party at 1:30 a.m.? I told her no. Straight up. No discussion. I wasn't about to get out of bed to take her anywhere, let alone to a party her parents specifically told her not to go to. She was my responsibility, and I wasn't going to screw that up. But Lena didn't take no for an answer. She started going on about how unfair it was and how everyone treated her like a child. I could tell she was trying to guilt-trip me, but I wasn't budging. I just kept telling her to go back to bed. After a few minutes, she got mad. She started calling me a jerk and saying I was ruining her life. You know, the usual teenage dramatics. I know it well because I was one once. I was exhausted, irritated, and just done with the conversation. So I said, "Not my problem," turned over and closed my eyes. She finally stomped out of my room. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. I assumed she'd cry herself to sleep or text her friends complaining about how unfair life was. I had no idea she was about to ruin my life. I slept fine after that, not even giving our argument a second thought. It wasn't the first time Lana had acted like a spoiled brat, but when I woke up the next morning, everything was different. The first thing I noticed was my phone blowing up with notifications, missed calls, text messages, and voicemails from my parents, Emma, and even my uncle. All the messages were vague, but the tone was angry. I thought something had happened to Lana. Maybe she'd run away or been caught trying to sneak out, but then I realized Emma and Lana weren't home. The house was eerily quiet. I didn't have much time to process because around 11 a.m., there was a loud knock at the front door. It was my parents and they were furious. When I opened the door, I immediately knew something was very wrong. My mom looked livid, her eyes red as if she'd been crying, and my dad had this cold, disappointed expression. I barely had a chance to say anything before they started laying into me. They didn't even give me any context at first, just question after question, rapid fire. My mom kept asking, "How could you do this? And what were you thinking?" Meanwhile, my dad just stood there shaking his head. I felt like I'd stepped into a nightmare because I had no idea what they were talking about. Finally, I managed to get a word in and asked, "What the hell is going on?" That's when my mom dropped the bombshell. Lana had told her parents that I had done something inappropriate to her while she was at our house. It was so absurd that it felt unreal. I kept asking what exactly she claimed I'd done, and my mom just kept saying, "She's 16. You know how serious this is." My dad told me to stop playing dumb and that I owed them an explanation. I tried to tell them my side. I explained that the only interaction I'd had with Lana that night was when she came into my room at 1:30 a.m. demanding I take her to a party. I told them I refused, went back to sleep, and that was it. But they weren't listening. My mom was convinced I was lying, and my dad said they needed to verify a thing. They started searching my room, rummaging through drawers and going through my stuff like detectives looking for evidence. My mom even took my laptop and phone, saying they needed to check everything. I just stood there in shock, unable to believe what was happening. My own parents, people who had known me my entire life, thought I was capable of something so disgusting. Of course, they found nothing because there was nothing to find, but even then, it didn't seem to change how they looked at me. A while later, Emma came back to the house. I hoped she'd back me up, but as soon as she walked in, she looked just as upset as our parents. She told me she'd taken Lana home early that morning. Apparently, Lana had gone to Emma's room in the middle of the night crying and saying she wanted to go home. Emma asked what was wrong, but Lana wouldn't explain. She just kept saying she needed to leave, so Emma drove her home and stayed there with her. Everything seemed fine until Emma got a call from our uncle later that morning. That's when she found out Lana had accused me of that. Emma looked torn, like she wanted to believe me but wasn't sure what to think. She told me she didn't understand why Lana would make something like that up. I could see on her face that even she had doubts about me. That hurt more than anything. By now, I was exhausted from trying to explain my side of things. I felt like I was talking to a wall. My parents didn't care to hear me out. They had already decided I was guilty. My mom kept saying things like, "Why would she lie about something so serious?" While my dad just stood there silently judging me. Even Emma, the one person I thought might be on my side, kept asking, "Is there something you're not telling us?" I felt cornered. No matter what I said, it didn't make a difference. The only thing I could think of was to call my uncle and try to explain myself directly. Maybe if I told him what really happened, he would listen. For some reason, they wanted us to watch over her. They knew she might try something like sneaking out to a party with her friends. So if I told him my side of the story, it would probably make sense to them. When I called, my aunt answered first. She was furious, calling me all sorts of names and demanding to know how I could do something so disgusting to her daughter. I tried to say something, but she wouldn't listen. Finally, my uncle got on the phone, and I explained everything. How Lana had asked me to take her to a party, how I refused, and how that was literally the only conversation we had that night. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then my uncle said, "I'll call you back." I had no idea what that meant, but I was left waiting, my stomach in knots while my parents continued looking at me like I was a criminal. I knew I was innocent, but at that moment, I felt like the whole world was against me. About an hour later, my uncle called me back. That hour felt like an eternity and I could barely breathe when the phone rang. When I answered, my uncle sounded different. He wasn't angry anymore. He sounded, I don't know, calmer, maybe even embarrassed. He started by apologizing, saying he shouldn't have jumped to conclusions and that he was just very upset by what Lana had told them. Apparently, when she got home, she was crying and told my aunt and uncle that I had touched her while she was at my house. Naturally, they believed her. She was their daughter. But after hearing my side of the story, my uncle decided to dig a little deeper. He called some of Lana's friends and confirmed that there had indeed been a party the night before. Her friends admitted that Lana had been texting them all night, even saying she'd find a way to sneak out. When my uncle confronted Lana with this information, she broke down and confessed the truth. She lied. She had made up the entire story because she was angry that I wouldn't take her to the party. I felt a strange mix of emotions hearing this relief, obviously, but also a wave of anger I wasn't prepared for. My uncle was apologizing, but he was also trying to downplay it, saying things like she's young, and she didn't think about the consequences. He even had the nerve to ask me not to take it personally. His daughter had just accused me of one of the worst things imaginable, and I was supposed to brush it off as if it was no big deal. After the call, I told my parents what my uncle had said, thinking it would clear the air. And sure, they stopped looking at me like I was the devil, but their response wasn't what I expected. My dad just said something about how things got out of hand as if it was some minor misunderstanding. My mom looked relieved, but instead of apologizing, she started making excuses. "We had to take it seriously," she said. "What if it had been true?" Emma didn't say much. She just sat there, looking uncomfortable, as if she didn't know how to act now that the truth was out. What really made me angry, though, was that no one seemed upset with Lana. My parents didn't say a word about how serious her lie was or how it could have ruined my life. They just seemed happy it wasn't true and acted like we should all move on. Later that day, my uncle called me again. He apologized a second time, but it felt insincere. He said Lana was remorseful and didn't realize how serious her lie was. He asked me to let it go because she's young and made a mistake. A mistake? A mistake is spilling juice on the carpet, not accusing someone of a crime that could destroy their reputation, relationships, and future. What made it worse was that Lana didn't face any real consequences. My uncle said he had a serious talk with her about how grave her actions were. But that was it. No punishment, no apology, nothing. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the fallout. My parents never apologized for assuming the worst about me, and Emma kept acting like it wasn't a big deal because everything worked out in the end. It didn't feel like it worked out, at least not for me. What haunts me the most is how quickly everyone believed her. My parents, my sister, my aunt, and my uncle. Everyone assumed I was guilty. No one stopped to think about who I am or whether the accusation made sense. And even after the truth came out, it seemed like no one cared about what I had gone through. My mom and dad didn't say sorry. They just said they were trying to find the truth, as if that justified treating me like garbage. My uncle told me to move on, as if I was the one making this bigger than it needed to be. But the worst part? Lana didn't even have to apologize. She got away with it, as if nothing ever happened. It's been 2.5 weeks, and I still don't know how to feel. Part of me wants to demand an apology from my parents, from Emma, and especially from Lana. I want them to at least acknowledge everything that happened. But another part of me wonders if it's even worth it. Would it change anything? Or should I just cut my losses and move on? Update 1. It's been a few weeks since I shared what happened, and I want to thank everyone who encouraged me to stand up for myself. After thinking it over a lot, I finally decided I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. What Lana did wasn't just a mistake, and the way my family treated me was unforgivable. So I confronted them. I called a family meeting at my parents' house. My mom, dad, Emma, my aunt, and my uncle were all there, but Lana, conveniently, wasn't. Apparently, she didn't feel comfortable facing me, which made me even angrier. Still, I thought it was better that way. At least I wouldn't have to deal with her fake tears. I started by explaining everything. I told them exactly how they made me feel. How their immediate reaction to Lana's accusation wasn't to ask me what happened or even consider my character, but to treat me like I was guilty from the start. My dad looked uncomfortable. My mom started crying and my uncle tried to interrupt me at one point, saying they did what they thought was right. I didn't let him. I told him that what they thought was right almost ruined my life. Then I brought up Lana. I said what she did was malicious, not a mistake, and that she should face real consequences for her actions. I told them I didn't care that she was 16. She was old enough to understand that accusing someone of something like that could destroy their future. I also made it clear that I wasn't going to move on or forgive anyone unless 3 things happened. First, Lana needed to apologize to me personally, face to face. Second, my parents, Emma, my aunt, and my uncle needed to acknowledge their mistakes and apologize for how they treated me. Third, Lana needed to face real consequences, not just a superficial talk. My parents were the first to respond, and let's just say I wasn't expecting anything different. My mom started crying, saying she was only trying to protect Lana and didn't know what to believe at the time. My dad said he understood why I was upset, but insisted they had to take the accusation seriously. I asked them how they would feel if I falsely accused them of doing something like that to me as a child. Would they find it fair to simply move on and forget about it once I admitted it was a lie? Emma tried to stay neutral, saying she didn't know what to believe throughout the situation, but that she was sorry if her behavior made me feel unsupported. My aunt, on the other hand, was as defensive as possible. She said Lana was just a child and that I should have compassion because Lana wasn't in a good emotional state when she lied. Of course, she wasn't in a good emotional state because she couldn't go to a party. My aunt even said I should be grateful that the truth came out quickly and that I didn't end up in real trouble. That was when I realized she didn't believe Lana had done anything wrong. My uncle was the only one who came close to offering what seemed like an apology. He said he regretted jumping to conclusions and admitted they should have handled things differently. But when I pressed him on what consequences Lana would face, the tone shifted. He said they had already talked to her and that was enough. I told everyone, point blank, that their excuses weren't enough. I told my parents that if they couldn't admit they were wrong and sincerely apologize, I didn't see how I could continue a relationship with them. I told Emma that her neutral stance hurt me more than she realized, and that she needed to take responsibility if she wanted to remain part of my life. And I told my aunt and uncle that until Lana apologized to me directly and faced real consequences, I didn't want anything to do with them or their daughter. My mom cried harder. My dad tried to play the victim, and my aunt accused me of being uncompassionate. My uncle tried to smooth things over by saying, "We're family. We should work through this together, not as strangers," but I wasn't having it. I stood up and told them I'd had enough. I said I loved them, but until they took responsibility for how they treated me and made Lana accountable for her actions, I didn't want them in my life. Then I left. It's been 2 weeks since that meeting, and I've cut off contact with my entire family. My parents have tried reaching out a few times, mostly with guilt-tripping messages, urging me to find a way to move past this before I regret what I'm giving up. Emma sent me a message saying she was sorry and wanted to talk, but I haven't responded yet. My aunt? Complete silence. The only person I've spoken to is my uncle, who called a few days ago to check in. He tried to convince me to forgive Lana, saying she's been distraught since the truth came out. I told him I'd consider forgiving her when she apologized to me directly and faced real consequences for what she did. Until then, I didn't want to hear her name. I don't know if my family will ever truly understand the damage they caused. Maybe they'll change with time, or maybe they won't. If Lana or anyone else in my family decides to take accountability someday, perhaps we can rebuild those bridges. But until then, I'm done being the one who has to endure everything. Update 2. Honestly, I didn't expect to write another update, but here we are. After weeks of silence, emotional manipulation, and excuses, my family surprised me, in a way. They reached out again, but this time, things were different. A few days ago, my dad called. At first, I ignored the call because, honestly, I wasn't ready for another round of excuses or speeches about letting it go so we can all sing Kumbaya. But then I got a message from Emma saying, "You should talk to Dad." This time, he's serious. Curiosity got the better of me. So I picked up when he called again. From the moment he started talking, I could tell his tone was different. He told me that he and my mom had been thinking a lot about what I said during the confrontation. He admitted they had failed me by jumping to conclusions and treating me like a criminal without giving me the benefit of the doubt. He said they had let Lana's tears blind them and let their emotions take over instead of thinking clearly. Then he said the words I had been waiting to hear. "We're sorry. We were wrong." After my dad apologized, he told me the rest of the family had also changed their stance. Apparently, my uncle had been the one to push for real consequences for Lana. After our confrontation, he realized that simply talking to her wasn't enough and that she needed to understand the severity of what she did. Here's what they've done. Lana is being sent to boarding school. My uncle and aunt enrolled Lana in a boarding school with strict behavior policies. Apparently, she's not happy about it, but they told her she needs structure and discipline after everything that happened. Her allowance has been cut. They've reduced her allowance to the bare minimum to cover food and essentials. My uncle said she'll have to earn back their trust. A direct apology. My uncle sent me a video of Lana apologizing. In the video, she looked like she had been crying or was trying to fake it. With her, it's hard to tell. She said she was sorry for lying about me, admitted she was wrong, and expressed regret for the harm she caused. She even acknowledged how serious her actions were and how much they could have ruined my life. Some might think a video isn't the same as an in-person apology, but honestly, I prefer this. It means I can stay far away from Lana. My dad told me they've been trying to hold Lana accountable while working on rebuilding trust with me. He said he knows they can't undo what they did, but they want to make things right moving forward. I truly appreciated the apology. Hearing my dad admit he was wrong and seeing my uncle finally take Lana's behavior seriously was a big step. But at the same time, I can't just pretend everything is fine now. The damage has already been done, and it took them far too long to take action. My parents, Emma, my aunt, and my uncle, all of them believed the worst about me without hesitation. Not only did they fail to defend me, but they also kicked me while I was down. And, Lana? Sure, she apologized. Maybe she genuinely feels sorry, but it's hard to believe anything she says after what she did. For all I know, her tears in that video could be another performance to regain everyone's sympathy. I told my dad that while I appreciated their efforts, I'm still not ready to return to the family. For now, I've decided to keep my distance. I'm focusing on myself, college, work, and the people in my life who have always supported me. Maybe one day, I'll be ready to rebuild those bridges, but it will be on my terms, not theirs. I'm grateful they finally took responsibility, but forgiveness isn't something that happens overnight. It's something they'll have to earn. Update 3. For this update, I need to give you some context about my family. You can skip this part and go straight to the update, but I think it's important for what I have to share. My uncle, Lana's father, is my dad's brother. On the other hand, my aunt is a friend of my mom's and was the one who introduced my uncle to his wife. She was also a friend of my dad's, though she's certainly closer to my mom. Both my mom and dad were friends with my aunt in college. That's where they met, and later, they introduced my uncle to my aunt. From that relationship came the little demon spawn that is Lana. With that background, now I can tell you what Lana has been doing. She's been telling some people that my dad has had a relationship with my aunt, using their long-time friendship as an excuse, claiming my dad and my aunt have had something going on from the beginning. She's saying this because she's upset about being sent to boarding school. She hoped her apology video would save her from that fate. However, her dad, my uncle, was serious about sending her, and he did. And how did Lana repay them? By lying. Of course, my parents and my uncles know it's a lie, especially now that they know how easily Lana can fabricate stories. But the rest of the family doesn't know that. They were never told about Lana's false accusation against me, so they also don't know about her apology and confession. And where do I fit into all of this? They want Lana's apology video to show it to other people to prove she's a liar. Apparently, they deleted the video after sending it to me as a way to erase what happened, but they think I might still have it. I told them I'd have to check to see if I hadn't deleted it, even though I know for a fact I haven't. I also told them it would be better if they let it go since Lana is just a child, and they should find forgiveness in their hearts. On top of that, I said, I can't believe Lana could lie about something so serious. Then I ended the call saying I needed to look for the video but warned them not to get their hopes up as I have an old phone with little storage and often delete things to make space. At this point, I'm being vindictive with them. But it's satisfying to see them go through what I went through. Maybe now they'll understand my perspective on all of this. I still haven't decided if I want to give them the video or not, but I'll let them suffer a little first. They did the same to me for weeks before offering any apologies or consequences. I don't see why I should rush now. I've been busy catching up on my Netflix series, so I haven't had time to think about something as serious as this. I'll probably let you all know my decision once I make it, but like my family, don't expect it to happen anytime soon. Update 4. It's time to share my decision. I'm not giving my family the video. I might be petty, worse than my parents, and all the things I've read in some comments, but I don't care. First, because they deserve it, but second, and more importantly to me, because I don't want that video to go viral. It's a video about a very serious accusation against me. And even though it's an apology for lying, I don't want to be associated with it in any way. Only my parents, my sister, and my uncles know about it, and I want it to stay that way. I've seen too many cases where the supposed victim admits they lied, but people still believe the accusation. Once you're accused of something that serious, it's not something you can easily erase. As for my family, Lana is still at boarding school and won't leave until she turns 18. I don't know what the original timeline for her punishment was, but lying again probably didn't help her case. As for my parents and uncles, people think my dad and my aunt are having an affair, and that my uncle and mom are being cheated on. Beyond a few strange looks and some scolding at the store, they haven't faced any major consequences. Some people even think my parents and uncles are into partner swapping. On the bright side, there are worse things, like the fact that this is my final update. In a way, I'll miss posting here, not because I enjoyed what happened, but because the posts unrelated to me directly have been more fun to write. I wish all of you the best.